Hey, Charlotte, welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm so excited to get to dive into a conversation with you. We always start the episodes out with a little bit of encouragement, words of wisdom from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this before we start rolling into everything, and then I
All
forget.
right.
Um, so this one says, it's a quote from John Lennon, actually. It
Mhm.
says, "Life is what happens to you while you are busy making other plans."
Yeah, that one is good. Yeah, that in a ways is like a mindful quote, right? Being aware and being in the moment is so hard to do because you are always looking forward. And when you're always looking forward into the future or you're stuck in the past, you're never like in the now. And so definitely like things, especially for caregivers, never go the way that we expected them to. So understanding that this is this is how things are is the easiest way to start moving forward into finding a way to enjoy life while you're in the midst of this life that you didn't expect to have.
I know, I know. We're going to dive into the, loving your caregiving life because I think it's so interesting that the name of your business and that it is something that we need to be mindful of and take action toward. But I got to back up though a little bit and first and say, like, we've connected too about my daughter moving to Chicago and
Yeah.
just an update for people there. She started her job in the NICU at Northwestern Hospital and she's got her first paycheck, and we are very excited to have her, like, one, close to being completely off of our payroll, which will be amazing. And she's really loving it in Chicago. But I know you'd moved there from Minnesota recently. So
Yeah.
how's that working for you?
Yeah, it brings up a lot of caregiver issues that I didn't expect when we had planned on moving, just finding new doctors for my husband and letting go of the hospital system that we were in. But it's all been really good and just the lifestyle change. It's making us feel a little bit more alive, I guess, because we're out in the world more often, living in a big city compared to living in the suburbs. So it's been a big transition. The summer's been full of transitions and
Mhm.
it's been a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a big Chicago caregiving base, I think, up there. You know, a lot of the folks I'd met from the National Caregiving Conference years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so at some point, I feel like I need to come up and see Natalie and host a, like, Happy Healthy Caregiver happy hour or something where we
Yeah.
all connect and meet each other in the Chicago area. So more to come on that because I can't
Yeah.
wait to go up and see her again and not be so put to use of assembling furniture and cleaning things. So yeah. So tell us a little bit, I touched on your caregiving a little bit in the intro, but, you know, I enjoy having different caregivers on the show as far as the
Mhm.
caregivers of children and siblings and aging parents and your partner or spousal caregiver. And first I'd love to hear a little bit about your caregiving story. Like, when did this happen in your
Mhm.
marriage? What was your life like before and after caregiving? Um, and yeah, and how is spousal caregiving different than other caregiving? So that's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack there.
Yeah. How much time do we have? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
My husband was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2013. So we're approaching a decade of cancer in our household. And we had been married, I want to say, I always get the number wrong, probably 18 years. We've known each other since high school. So we've kind of grown up together, which doesn't necessarily make it easier, right? Because we're best friends and partners in life. And so, yes, we have a really good bond to use as kind of to support each other, but it still hurts the same, right? It's still just as difficult to watch someone go through something that you can't fix.
Mm.
And so, before we found out about his diagnosis, life was good. My daughter was about, I think, 7. Um, we were just like a happy family, doing our thing. And I was a full-time yoga and meditation teacher, and just actively working at helping people de-stress and just doing what I love. And so he found out that he had thyroid cancer, and everything like went black. Like it was almost as if I had just been like shoved into a room and the door was closed. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. The fear and the anxiety and the stress that just like floods you when you first find out about a diagnosis is incredible. Just the power that it has over your life. And so for a long time, I struggled to just figure out how to not only survive as a caregiver, but to keep up with this crusade that I had to like make sure my husband would stay alive, right? So the main fear was losing my husband.
Mm.
And so, which I had no skill to do, like I'm not a doctor, but I did, that my way to cope was to try to gain control of all the information that I could find so that I would make sure that all the doctors were not missing anything, which when you start to get into cancer research 10 years ago, that was close to impossible. So, um, after a while, I realized that things were not balanced for me and that I could not continue moving forward and being happy in life and enjoying my family and all of us finding some way back towards what we had before and being able to just live, right? And so it actually hit me in the face. I was talking to someone and just talking about this huge amount of worry that I was dealing with. And they said, "Well, have you ever tried meditating?" And they didn't know. It was a health professional and they didn't know what I did. And so I kind of looked at them and I was just filled with anger because how could they tell me to do this thing that I already know how to do? And then I realized I was really angry because I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten how to care for
You
myself.
weren't actively meditating at the time or
I
practice.
was up until the day that I found out that he had cancer. And when
Mm.
that happened, every moment that I had was spent on trying to figure things out or trying to make appointments or trying to like try to have life normal for our daughter. And so everything that I did for myself, and it was a pretty strong care plan that I had for myself when life was okay, right?
Yep.
Once life got difficult, it all fell apart. And so this was about maybe 6 months in to being a caregiver. And then I realized I need to set boundaries. I need to reprioritize. Um, and then years later, I realized that there's so much that I could have used when I became a caregiver that wasn't out there. Like I needed to know that worrying that my husband would die was a valid thing for me to feel and to be able to talk about to people and not worry about being judged. And
Mm.
so there's just so many things that no matter how you caregive and who you caregive for, that we all share, resentment and shame and regret and not wanting to do things for ourselves because we feel that we're not the ones that are sick or need that extra help. Like all of those things are normal and I needed to hear that, right?
Yeah.
I had been in parent groups, and so that's where you go and you're like, oh my goodness, you would not believe what happened to the diaper explosion. Like things that are just socially acceptable to talk about, which but are very personal. But we didn't have that. I didn't have that when I became a caregiver. There weren't Facebook groups at that time that were active. And so there wasn't a lot out there. And I just wanted people to know who are caregivers that it's okay, that you do deserve to see yourself out in the world. You do deserve to know that these things that you're experiencing as a caregiver are not wrong. All of us are going through them in some aspect.
Mm.
So I had spent years being a caregiver. I'm a very persistent person, as nurses tell me. I've learned very well how to advocate for my husband. But, thankfully in the beginning, I realized that I needed to fight for myself just as much.
Was there like some moment, like other than they say asking you if you meditated, where you were like, this isn't sustainable? Was there like a
Mm-hmm.
breaking point? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. There was a time when my husband needed a specific MRI, and the town that we were living in at that time only had one machine in the whole entire area. And so, because of it, it was backed up. And I became obsessed with calling every day, in a nice manner, getting to know the nurses and just saying, hey, are there any cancellations? I would just call for cancellations, but which is fine. I'd done that before, but the amount of worry that started to grow because what will happen if, because we were 3 months out, he was told he has to have this full body MRI. We couldn't get it done within 3 months, and I just was like, this doesn't seem right. Like, if he needs it right now, why isn't there kind of this sense of urgency from anybody else? And so the amount of worry that caused, that just grew for something that I had no control over, became too much, where I
mm,
was finding that I was like close to crying all the time. Like, it just like completely consumed me. The worry that if we didn't get this MRI done, something would happen and it would become too advanced and we wouldn't be able to do a thing, right? Which are normal things to worry about, but not at the level that I was worrying about them. And so that is what kind of made me reach out to the healthcare professional. And I was like, look, there's something wrong with me. Like, I should not be this emotional all the time. And she said, you're experiencing unproductive worry. You have to start learning how to worry about the things that you actually can control. And you need to consider meditating. And I was like, oh, okay. So
and
we'll
it's so
start with
interesting.
that.
What did you call it? Unproductive worrying. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So one of the top talks that I do is called Worry War. It's how to take action and take care of business, because it is so important that the worrying is just
Yeah.
doesn't get you anywhere.
No.
So you do have to take action. Well, did you start meditating then?
Yes, started meditating. I mean, I was actively teaching other people how to meditate and other people how to, move their bodies in yoga and how to let go of stress and anxiety. But the thing is, what I started to do is compartmentalize my life into work and cancer, right? So I would go to work, um, flip the switch, be the yoga person, turn it back off, rush back out, worried that I had missed doctor's phone calls or a scheduling phone call that I'd been waiting for. Um,
Mm.
it was going to work, teaching, finding a way to be calm and opening and inviting to those classes because that's what they deserved. But then that was off as soon as I left. And I didn't make time for it because I think that the amount of stress I was living with was a stress based on me feeling there was an attack, like there was a big threat on our family.
Yeah,
And that's how I had lived for a good half a year, just trying to like fight to keep everything together.
it's so rough. Did he end up getting the MRI?
He got the MRI. We did get it within 2 weeks. Like, I think they were just tired of me calling and somebody canceled and we got in. Um, And, the way thyroid cancer works is, a lot of people think that thyroid cancer is an easy cancer to have because oftentimes people can have their thyroid removed and then there's no evidence of cancer, but that doesn't happen for a lot of people.
Mm.
And so his had already spread. And so what they do basically is they watch things grow. And when they're big enough, they take them out. So he's had multiple surgeries over the past 10 years. Um, and there's things that they continually watch. So it's an ongoing low level, um, running theme in our lives, right? And so what we've decided to do and what he largely does is he just lives, and 2 weeks before a scan is when it becomes real again. So we kind of just try to put it, like, we don't want to feed it. We just do what we can to live. If he like needs time for himself to rest because he's not feeling well or anything like that, like, it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, caring for a spouse, I think it's the biggest thing is learning how to navigate the change in the dynamic of your relationship. And that happens to every caregiver. If you're caring for a parent, that is a big issue as well. And so I think that if you can find it in both of you to work as a team instead of um, trying to over control on one end more than the other, then it's a little bit more of a positive experience. And when my husband first found out, when he was first diagnosed, and we had gone to the first doctor's appointment, and we were driving home, and I had all these questions, and he just kind of was like, I don't know what to ask. I don't know, I don't understand half the stuff you're telling me. And he just said, you know what, how about if I just beat cancer and you take care of the rest? Like, you help me figure out what questions we have, help me make these appointments, because at the moment I don't have the energy to do it all, right? Like, I can try to be positive and work to fight cancer and to recuperate from surgeries if you can help me do the rest. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, fine. So at the very beginning, we kind of established what our roles were going to be. And every time we walk into a new doctor, I try to stay as quiet as possible in the beginning to give them an opportunity to make that relationship. And then the doctor will always say, what questions do you have? And he'll say, well, quite frankly, my wife is the one that asks the questions, and that's just the way we work. And the doctor will turn, okay, what questions do you have?
Yeah,
So we've made it work for us.
that's good. Did you even take on the role or identify as a caregiver when this started happening? Like when you said it
No,
wasn't, yeah.
no, it wasn't presented to me as an option. It wasn't, I was never pulled aside and said, hey, we just gave you all this information about what is happening with your husband. Let's give you some information on what to expect, or here are some resources you can reach out to kind of find some support. It was, your husband has cancer. This is what we're going to do. Let's schedule these things and go. Um, and, and there's a lot more now than there was 10 years ago, but I feel like that's still lacking, because anytime I've gone in to a new doctor with my husband, there's never been a checkup with the person that's with him.
Right.
So, that is something that I feel just needs to be changed, because they obviously know, based on how he presents our relationship, that I'm a big part of the team.
Yeah.
So no, like, I was never like told or given a talk, or,
Yeah.
here's a
No,
pamphlet.
nothing. I know. That was my big beef too. It still is. And I ask people every now and then that question, and I don't really think it has changed very much.
No,
Unless you get one of the lucky ones where maybe somebody's been in your role
right.
before, then perhaps that can get changed. But we both get a diagnosis, the primary caregiver, and
Exactly.
when a diagnosis happens, and it's a lot. Well, how do you kind of protect the relationship? And to your point, like
Mhm.
we all have this relationship, but there's an intimacy level on
Right.
the for a husband and wife or a partner. Like how do you protect that?
Yeah. I try to be vigilant as to how often, I call it, the caregiver switch stays on or off, right? Um, there are times where the caregiver switch is on more than it usually is, and that's usually before and after surgeries. If he's not feeling well for some reason, which happens a lot when you change thyroid medication. Um, you know, those are times where when I ask him if he's okay, I'm asking from a different space, right? And then the other times when we're not in this kind of like high priority situation, there are times where I don't turn it off as fast as I should. And I realize that when I look at what we're going to do and what we're doing, that that's more coming from the perspective of someone who's caring for someone instead of someone who cares for someone, you know? And so there there are just situations that always bring it back though. Like if for some reason he has like a pain, like sometimes like we moved, so he's been picking up a lot of heavy things and then he had kind of like this weird pain, and a normal person would be like, you just probably pulled something. For me, I'm like, what could that be, right? And so there's some parts of caregiving that just don't turn off.
Right.
But what we do is we always, like from the very beginning, we've always found ways to connect um, in some form of how we used to do things before he was diagnosed. So in the hospital, after he had his thyroid removed, so, that's a pretty heavy surgery, and he was in the hospital for about 5-6 days. Um, when he was able to, we put something on that would make us laugh, because we've always liked, going to see comedians and watching comedies. So, or we would put on a movie. And I think as things go along, he was home. We used to always like going out to dinner. Well, we couldn't do that. So we would order something. I would go pick it up because that was before the era of DoorDash and Grubhub.
Mhm.
And and we would just spread out like a tablecloth or something on the bed and eat together. So what we found out and realized, I don't think even knowing it in the beginning, was it wasn't what we did, it was the intention that we placed. It was that we were spending time together as two people who enjoy each other instead of just eating. Like, you can eat on the bed and not pay any attention to the person that's sitting next to you. So we made it an event just because we were finding a way to make a period of time special for the two of us. And so we just continue doing that. I mean, there are times where, we have our issues, like everyone gets cranky and upset about something, but we are very vocal about how we feel. And so if one of us is upset or anxious or just like, you just have those days, you don't know why you're in such a bad mood, but you are. And we'll say, I'm in a bad mood right now, or the timing isn't right for this conversation. And so we just respect each other's boundaries when it comes to that.
So
It's
much
just,
of everything is about communication and
yeah.
managing expectations. I mean, you and I both have something in common where I've known my husband a long time too, where he was my high
Mhm.
school prom date. And yeah, we rub each other wrong. And sometimes I'll just be like, look, I'm in a foul mood right now and I don't even want
Yeah.
to be in my own skin. So you might want to like, warning, hazard
Right.
sign. So when you live with someone 24/7, I mean that's always going to happen.
It
We
is.
see the all kinds of stages of each other. Tell me about your digital magazine, Caregiving Confessions.
Yeah. So that is my new kind of like project that I love right now. Um so I realized that when I'm on social media, I get a lot of good information, but it tires me out and it kind of just makes me just like I need a break all the time. Um and one day I was taking my social media break and I was like, man, I really want a magazine. Like, that's something that I used to always do. Like, that was my treat. I would just go, especially in the fall, go get the fall issue. And they were super huge. And just like sitting with something and paging through it and filling out, quizzes and looking up, product suggestions. Like, that was fun for me. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go to the bookstore. I'm going to go see what they have. And I'm like, well, none of this really calls to me. Like, As a caregiver, nothing, I'm not seeing myself here.
Mm.
And so I decided that there's so much information that and ways that I can help people, that maybe I wasn't finding all the ways that I could kind of meet people where they are. And if someone likes to read and someone loved magazines and, that's like their favorite thing to do, or that's their form of self-care, like I wanted to provide something that could give them that.
Mm.
And so Caregiving Confessions, it's the title is such because throughout the magazine, I kind of divulge things, like I confess things that I do as a caregiver that I've experienced. Like one was I hide in closets when I need a break.
Or the bathroom, done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know that they're all things that to me, like sometimes I feel really vulnerable putting them in there, but I always say there's another person out there who does the same exact thing and would love to hear that that is not just them. And so there's always one self-care topic or one topic that is specific for caregivers, no matter who you care for. We've had an identity issue, and that was in trying to figure out, first acknowledging that you're actually a caregiver and trying to figure out what kind of caregiver you are, because then that's the first step towards learning how important your role is and prioritizing yourself. And in that issue, there was, ways to say goodbye to the person that you once were,
Mm.
because we don't always process the grief that comes with losing the lives that we had before we were caregivers. But at the same time, there are, all right, so this is how you might like to process this. Here's a journal sheet. Here's a link to a free meditation. Here's, I think that month was, there's always a playlist to listen to. And so it was a playlist that you can cry your eyes out to.
Mm.
And, the top 3 movies to watch if you're looking to find yourself. And so there's always the fun part of that magazine, but there's also there's content that will help you throughout the month kind of think about, work on, and find ways to really understand who you are as a caregiver, and how just understanding that and acknowledging that can really make a big difference. And then all these other things that you can do, because, we're all given those lists of things and told what we should do. And half the time it has nothing to do with our personality. It doesn't work. And then caregivers oftentimes just say, well, someone told me I needed to meditate, and I tried it and I only made it 10 seconds. And so there must be something wrong with me because I can't do these things that people tell me. And so the magazine is to show up for everyone and say, you have to find your own way. Here are things for you to try so that you can find that actually works for you. Because it's not your fault self-care doesn't work. It's the fault of all these people just giving you a list of something to do and not helping you try to figure out
Right.
what that
It's
is.
personal. It's so personal. Well,
Yeah.
and we'll link to your website where they can find
Nice.
out more information about the Caregiving Confessions. It's a monthly subscription, right? Where
It
they
is.
get that. And then I think this is a good time to pivot towards the self-care. So
Yeah.
what is your definition, Charlotte, of self-care?
Yes. Self-care is anything that you can do that gives you a moment to just let go. If it allows you to sigh, if it allows you for a moment to not worry, to get out of your head and just be with yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're extremely happy. It just means that you're in a place where you can just breathe. So that means that it's not, expensive, long treatments, classes, things to do. It could be literally, sitting and breathing for 5 minutes, because I know there is something out there for everyone that they can do for 5 minutes. And when they're done, feel changed for at least a small amount of that time.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you echo a lot of the things that I believe as well. So I think we're right there together. But tell me about some of your self-care habits where you've tried things on and the things that are just you're in your toolbox, on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
It all has to do with what is going on in my life and inside, right? So, I've been in a moment of transition between moving away from friends, moving to a new city, taking my daughter away to school for the first time. We're empty nesters for like we're in our second week. And so, and also finding new care team for my husband, it's just been up in the air. And so when that happens, I know I need to slow down. Like I need to ground myself, and where I normally would go out and do a lot of things and try to find groups and new people to meet, I know that I need to kind of go inward. So it's a lot of reading, it's journaling, it's dancing, because for me movement kind of it gets the emotions out, and it's kind of sometimes it's a sad sight of me like doing Zumba and crying at the same time. But it helps me process to move. I'm not you know, I'm not a runner. But I love to dance. So I will do that. I love to sing. So I do the things that make me feel happy, that feel good to do, even if I'm not feeling well, right? Because I know those are the only things that will be the ones that I will actually do and pull from. I spend a lot of time outside when I need to kind of connect with myself. I meditate every morning, but that's more of that happens all the time,
Mhm.
regardless. Um, I I do yoga, but it's not, so whenever you say yoga, like people think of, the
Class.
sweaty classes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like that's not what it looks like for me. I do teach classes, but my own practice, it just depends. Like sometimes I might just lie on the floor with my legs up on a sofa. The amount of energy that it takes, it just mimics and mirrors what I need. Um and so it's a lot of being real with myself, which sometimes doesn't feel like self-care, but it's the easiest way to not let things not kind of hide and push things deep down, because you're going to wait for the right time when you have the energy to kind of deal with them, because that never comes, and
No,
then
you
they
won't
just
find it. No.
no. So I think, and talking things out with people that actually I know will listen and have my best interest at heart.
That's good.
Yeah.
Why is it important to you that caregivers are seen and empowered and really are understanding their worth? Like why does that drive you?
Yeah. I think because they're not. Because I mean, like we just talked about, like when you first become a caregiver, you're not addressed as a caregiver. You're not given the option or know that this is what's happening to you. And then that just continues down the line. When my husband was diagnosed, tons of people wanted to know how he was, which was awesome. I loved it. It made me happy. But they also didn't check in with me, which means they're not educated or at least have some kind of idea of what a caregiver is. So, we go along our steps as we progress into being caregivers. And along those lines, we're not kind of informed in how important our role is. So, if a caregiver doesn't understand that, or they do, but they find it difficult to own the fact that their role is so important, um, everything else falls apart when it comes to them being able to set boundaries and prioritize themselves. Because if you don't feel that what you do is important enough for you to take it on as a role, that you have to be healthy, emotionally available, for the person that you care for, then self-care will be the most difficult thing that you will have to try to do.
Yeah.
because you don't see the worth in it, because you don't see the worth in yourself.
And when you're talking, I'm like thinking about like when I worked in corporate America and we had, the CEO and the CFO and all them, like they couldn't even fly on the same airplane because if
Yeah,
something happened,
exactly.
one of the whole company would potentially fall to pieces, right? So it's almost the same thing, right? Like we talk about the
Mhm.
oxygen mask, but it's really about like you got to be on separate airplanes. Like it's
Right.
it's so vital to you are the CEO of this unit of life, whether it's a family or whoever
Exactly.
you're caring for. Like it's essential. It's essential. So
Yeah.
I
And those
get
CEOs are so important to the company, and their jobs have such high social status that when they decide they're going to take a 2-week vacation, everyone will make it happen, right? But caregivers are at home 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, helping this person follow doctor's orders, basically helping them do the things to help them stay alive and healthy relatively, or to help them along the journey that they're going on with their disease. And and so what they do is help a person survive and live. That should have a high social status, and it doesn't. So a caregiver doesn't feel like they can go away for a day because people will judge, or they feel guilty or shame because they even want to, escape. It shouldn't be an escape. It should be, I'm going on vacation. Like, I've done all this work. I am an important, integral part of not only my family, but my society, because this person isn't being put into the care of like a public health system, right? Because you're doing all the
right.
things
You're the
for them.
lifeline. Yes.
Right. So why shouldn't caregivers be able to just say, I'm going to take a break, and it be okay, and that there's something there to kind of step in for them so that they can do that.
Go Charlotte. Go Charlotte. Yeah, like get on it. Yes, yes, respite. Like we need it so bad and it just
Mhm.
shouldn't be this hard, right? Like we get passionate about it. Um what would you say to somebody that, comes up to you and they're like, they're just very task oriented in their caregiving life and they think their life sucks and
Mhm.
you've been there, but you're like, what steps would you take that advise to them or suggest, because I don't like to should on them, but
Right.
what, to love their caregiving life, like
Yeah.
where do you start? Like my life sucks.
Yeah.
I'm drowning. I don't even know who I am anymore. I have no time for myself. Like you hear these things all the time.
Right. Yeah. I would say to first kind of I would say sit down and write out all the things that you do. And then find the things that you hate to do the most. And then ask yourself, who else can do these things? Or do they really need to be done? Right. Um, and then in the mornings or whenever you can remember, just find one thing that you're happy exists, or something that you're grateful for. Right. I know that caregiving can feel so suffocating and so horrible and can cause so much sadness and anguish. But if I can wake up in the morning and be grateful that I was able to wake up, right? Or if I can wake up and find thankfulness that the person that I care for is still alive, or something as simple of I can taste something or I can
Hmm.
see, right? If you start small and start realizing there's some good in your life that is being overshadowed by all of the things that you pay attention to that hurt, it helps a little to start putting things into perspective.
Hmm. It's good advice. And if folks love, listening to you and love, and they want to learn more from you, you have some great tips on Instagram and you have your own
Thank
podcast,
you.
Love Your Caregiving Life. So we're coming at you people with lots of self-care strategies and I think it's great. I think it's great. Let's keep the self-care theme going. I'm going
All
to
right.
ask you some prompts from the Just For You daily self-care journal. So there's no wrong answers here, Charlotte. I think we kind of talked about that one, so I'm going to take that one out. Okay, so this is fun. List the
Okay.
products or things that you would include in your self-care tote bag?
Yeah. All right. So my self-care tote bag, which most times would be my emergency self-care, like I need something now. I just found out, like I got a bad phone call, like I'm super stressed. First is smell. So I love lavender oil or Palo Santo oil. So I would have that so that I could just roll it um on my wrists. I spray it in my mask that I still wear,
Mm.
and it
What was
helps.
the second oil? I'd never heard of that one.
Palo Santo.
Palo Santo. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It has a very like musky, woody smell.
Okay.
Fuzzy socks always. Fuzzy socks always. Because I always need something soft. And then something that I can look at that brings joy. So that could be a picture, it could be a painting. So oftentimes, like I have a swipe file on my phone of like just like an album. And so it'll be like my happy time album, and I'll just look through pictures that I
Mm.
put in there. And then usually if I need this set of things, I don't want to move. Then I turn into like this comfy, like cozy person. So there's usually something to write on, because sometimes I need to just get things out on paper. And then there will always be kind of a like a mint tea,
Mm.
um, because that helps when I want to be calm. And there's usually some kind of music, like a playlist. And it depends on what kind of emotional state I'm in. It might be something that I like belt out the music or cry to. Like it just depends. Like sometimes you just need something to help you cry,
Yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know?
I have my chill out playlist. I have, yeah, just instrumental hymns, like ones that
Yeah.
help me fall asleep.
I
Yeah,
have
totally.
walkout music that I'll listen the day of walking into a hospital, like just to like hype me up to like,
Oh,
you
like it's
know,
your, like instead of a batters up song, it's your
yeah,
like it hypes you up
yeah,
to get. Oh geez.
exactly.
Yeah, I love your Happy Time album. I might steal that in some way.
Yeah,
Like that's a good thing to yeah, just like and remember, even when we are stressed, like we could have another album that's like, look at all this hard stuff that we've lived through album.
right.
Like you're a
Yes,
badass album because
yes,
you've done hard things and swipe, swipe, swipe. Like you've been there and you've gotten through it,
yes.
and you will get through this one too.
And you have to take those pictures. I'm sorry. Like you can't wait for happy, good moments to take pictures. I have so many pictures of myself just looking so torn apart. And like I take pictures in hospital settings, but never above the knee, right? So, because those people didn't ask to be taken, like, I just feel like that's
Yeah.
like a invasion of privacy. But I'll take pictures of beds that my husband is lying in. I don't even take pictures of him. It's like the hospital beds, it's the wheels, it's the tile on the floor, just so that I can like remember, all right, we went and we did this thing. And oh, that's the floor from the surgery that really went, just was horrible. And so that I can kind of just look through and remember that we made it.
We
And
made it.
there could be
Yeah.
another
We
one.
made it album. Yes, exactly. Um, what's something an unhealthy habit that you've successfully kicked, or we could flip it and say a healthy habit that you've added in like successfully?
All right,
Your
unhealthy
choice.
habit. Wow. An unhealthy habit would be to always want to do things perfectly and to have a list that always has to be checked off.
Mm.
And so trying to do things perfectly, I don't know, it can be difficult, right? Because when you're in the thick of caregiving and you're a person that wants everything to be a certain way, like having a clean house, or I mean it could be anything, right? The standards that you set for yourself in your life in your house in caregiving becomes overwhelming. Some of those things have to be let go. They either don't happen because you can't, or they don't happen because you choose not to. And if you choose not to do them, that's the best option, because if you can say, it's okay, this doesn't have to happen, because in order to care for myself, I need a nap more than I need clean clothes right now. So I'm just going to wash those clothes at a different time when I have a little bit more energy. And I'm going to take that time for myself. And I think that was getting to that place. Once I did, was huge. But before that, it was extremely difficult, because that was actually me prioritizing cleaning over my own self-care. So,
Mm-hmm.
figuring that out was helpful.
Yeah, you're like is your to-do list matching your values essentially
Exactly.
of what you're doing? And there is so much self-talk. Like I feel like I have these conversations in my head all the time too, and I'm like, is this really important? Is this,
Right.
is this a must do? Yeah. And am I the best person to be doing this?
Right.
And then my filter lately is like when taking on things, is it a hell yeah? If it's not, then
Right.
later. Okay, last question is interesting for you, Charlotte. It says, what do you love most about your life right now?
I love the connection that I have with my husband and my daughter. 100%. We're all at such a good place at a time when we're all in major transition, like lifestyle, life change. So, I love how connected we are and how good of a team we are.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Yeah, we always say Team Miller. So yeah, like united. Yeah, you can be united and be in different geographical locations too.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation with you. Is
Me
there anything
too.
else that you want to make sure that we have to say this before we tidy up the show? And then where can people learn more about you and find your
Yeah.
stuff?
Everybody can find me at loveyourcaregivinglife.com. All the things that we talked about, the podcast, the magazine, the coaching, it's all there. Look around. I'm always available. Just send me an email if you have any questions.
I love it. Thank you, Charlotte, for coming on the
Thank
Happy Health
you
and
so much.
keep preaching your self-care stuff. I love it.
Thank you.